Lamoussa Morodenibig. Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig. Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig. Gasuwa muna figura matuma. Yamma yamma.
Good to go? All right. Greetings, everybody. How y'all doing? Y'all can hear me? You sure y'all can hear me? All right, good, good. Oh, she telling me in the back I gotta talk louder. So, my name is Kenibashu. This is my brother Kagzrimen. We are members of Kebtah.
You gotta say that again slower so we can really hear the name.
Okay. My name is Kenibashu, yes. And this is Kagzrimen. Kagzrimen. All right. Everybody got that? Okay. All right. So today's presentation is basically about time. In a general sense, us in the West, we have this understanding of time where it's a commodity. It's a commodity that can be bought, right? You can buy a person's time for a task that you need to get done. That's the way that we understand it because we live in a capitalist society where anything can be bought, and time is the most precious commodity for most people. So thanks to our founder, Neb Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig, we've been able to take travels back to West Africa to visit the temples that are still active, that are still able to transmit the knowledge that's come from the Nile Valley, and those ancestors who've done that research to understand what time really is. So again, I want to start by thanking those ancestors, thanking your ancestors for bringing you here today and giving you the time and making that time for you to be here with us. So as we're trying to reshape our minds to understand what this phenomenon of time is, our master Neb Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig would say, you know, it's funny how the English language presents itself very simply, but we don't think enough to be able to see exactly what they're placing in front of us. So a word like watch, the word itself gives you the understanding of what it is. It's just something that you watch. It's something that you look at. The word clock is just the sound that the clock makes, but there's nothing else to it. There's no other concept behind it that gives you any understanding of what this thing is really about. So the way that our ancestors understood time is through two concepts. It's through rhythm and cycles. If you lit a candle at the beginning of the day and said that by the time this candle runs out, I'm going to try to accomplish this thing, this thing, this thing. Throughout the day, you could do that every day, and then that would be your concept of what time is. However much you could fit into the time that the candle burns out. So the way that our ancestors reached this concept of rhythm and cycles is through watching the stars. Every day that the sun rises, you know that you have about 12 hours, roughly, until it goes to the other side of the earth and it's dark. That's how you get the concept of time. It's not by a watch. It's not by even this so-called 24 hours that we're following. Where does the 24 hours even come from?
So when we talk about hours in the day, 24 is interesting because modern system or modern society, they give these numbers, they give these concepts and these ideas, but they never really give you the origins of where they come from. And when you start to study and really understand and sit with the indigenous and sit with those who carry the knowledge, have the information, those who look at the stars like we look at TV, you kind of start to understand that even to have 24 hours, that means there has to be 24 stars within the cycle of a day in which the sun comes into contact with, meaning hour 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all represent a different star. So when those stars are there, the ancestors realized that they were what they would call immobile stars. Not that they weren't moving, but from our position on Earth or our perception, it seems like those stars don't move. So when the sun comes into contact with those stars, it gives a different energy for the day. So they calculated and kind of like start to understand the effect that those stars have on us here on Earth based upon its reaction to Earth. Because without the Earth, we can't have what we consider to be zodiacs, which modern zodiacs don't have the concept of the Earth in the zodiac chart. And the reason for that is because, going back to what Kenibashu said earlier, when you understand the history of time, calendar, and space, for those, I'm sure a lot of you know about the history of Kemet, there's a temple, Dendera. The original map of the sky is there, the temple of Dendera. So the Greeks came, Romans came, even the Chinese, Ottomans, they all came. Everybody used to study at this temple. This is how they learned their timekeeping. So because they studied at this temple, they received knowledge and they received certain, I guess you could say, equations to the stars and how to map them. But the ancestors, being intelligent, didn't give them everything. So they didn't give them the whole system. So you'd find that a lot of the timekeeping systems around the world are missing certain key aspects. So they didn't have the aspect of the Earth in relation to the other stars. So that's what completes the entire zodiac. And our ancestors studied that and understood those 24 different stars within the day in contact with the Earth, but also in relation to the Sirius star. Because they understood that if we see the sun, we also see the moon. Those are the two stars that we see directly the closest to us and that we can kind of notice their effects the most. But what's affecting those things? And how do those things all have effects on each other? So you start to kind of have the understanding that the stars themselves are a community. It's almost like they're houses, and the houses stay on blocks. And the blocks are within like what you would call like a city. And the city is within a larger area, which is like a country. That's how the stars kind of function. So then the question becomes, okay, so what's the biggest area or the biggest star system that they could find that has the biggest effect on all of these cities and all of these blocks? And that's how they came up with the understanding of the Sirius star. You notice that the Dogon are famous for discovering the Sirius star. Modern anthropologists, scientists couldn't understand how, why. They were supposed to not be able to have that knowledge because we're supposed to be primitive, at least to their minds. And it's really because we had the understanding of the Earth. So because the Earth is in communication with the sun and the moon, they're also in communication with all of these other stars, because these are intelligences. That's what people don't understand. When we look at the Earth, it's an intelligence, meaning it's living, it's an entity, it's divine. You look at the moon, it's an intelligence, it's living, it's an entity, it's divine. So is all the other planets and all the other stars. So there's a communication, and that communication is what our ancestors learned to tap into to then be able to understand the movements of the stars and the movements of the entire solar system and the galaxy. That's what gave them their understanding. It wasn't, as they like to say, aliens. I always laugh at that because it's not like alien beings came down on spaceships, landed in Africa, and started giving Egyptians pyramid building secrets. It wasn't really like that. It was more so we learned to tap into the intelligence of the planets and the stars themselves. Because everything comes with intelligence, everything comes with an entity. The same way how your body has a spirit, it also has a soul. Those are two different things in our culture. The spirit and the soul is two different things, but you need them. Because we're triparts. That's how we understand it to be. With the body, the spirit, and the soul. It's the same thing with the stars, the solar system. There's a material aspect, one we can see, and then there's a non-material aspect. And our ancestors learned to communicate with the non-material, and that's how they learned their information and gained their knowledge. So that's really where this understanding of the zodiac is coming from. I heard Tini Hoppy talking a little bit about how when you're born, how you're born, it affects you. That is because when you look at even animals, our ancestors understood the non-materials to such a degree that they understood that even the animals are in relation to something non-material, what we call something divine. So that divinity itself will have an effect on that animal. But now, because you're born in a specific time and a specific place, whatever energies or powers are in effect is what will also have an effect on you. So you will notice you have relation to certain animals, certain rivers, certain trees, certain plants. And this is where, if any of you who study traditional African spirituality, the concept of the totem comes into play. The concept of your forbiddens, your taboos. And so here on the calendar, we have taboos and forbiddens that are specific to every individual based upon the time and space that they were born. So it even will tell you how you should eat for the month, how you should drink for the month, how you should interact with each other for the month during that time and space, because everything is cycles and rhythms. So when the beat changes, so you have to change the beat as well, you change the dance. So that's kind of how our ancestors understood calendar, they understood cycles and rhythms. So that's why if you look at the calendar there, you see every month you have different things that you can't eat, you can't consume. But if you even take it further, we also give what we call readings that's specific to specific people born at a specific time, specific place, and that will allow you to know what you should be doing for that specific month. Because again, everything is about intelligence. So the minute has an intelligence, there's a divinity behind it. The second has an intelligence, there's divinity behind it. The hour has intelligence, there's divinity behind it. The days have intelligences. There's divinities behind that too. So that means every aspect of every second to every hour to every day to every month to every week, whatever, has something divine that's in power, in control of that specific period, that specific space. So this is how we really got the understanding of the zodiacs. So like I said again, a lot of people came, they traveled, they left their places, they came to what we know as Kemet today to get the culture of what we know as Kemet. Because Kemet itself wasn't just one specific geographical location. A lot of people like to look at if I was to say Kemet, what people look at as Kemet today, and then I was to compare it to Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Washington, D.C. is basically the central hub for the entire United States. But Kemet was a culture. And what we call Egypt today, known as Iture or even Misra, was actually the central hub at that time. That was our Washington, D.C., if that makes sense. But the entire continent itself was Kemetic, because Kemetic is a culture. It's indigenous, it's sacred, it's ancestral. It's about the non-material meeting the material, and how those two meet to intermingle and to match and to create life and to create culture. So a lot of people traveled because Kemet was the birthplace, not just the birthplace of humanity, also the birthplace of intelligence, the birthplace of culture. So everybody came to understand and learn, to get knowledge, to gain culture. And this is what spread around the world.
And to make one point about the day today, right? That we're all here. We're all spending time together today because we're celebrating something called Kwanzaa, right? And if everyone here is familiar with the origins of Kwanzaa, then you know that realistically, this holiday that we're celebrating today of Kwanzaa that comes with these principles, those are, or Kwanzaa itself is an attempt at us here as people of the diaspora to try and find something to hold on to from our traditions, from our people back home. Now, I'm more than proud, honestly, to be here as a representative of the Dogon tribe of West Africa, being a student and learning from that culture directly, and to be able to give you this calendar, to be able to give you a way to reach not just our own attempt at reorganizing our minds and reorganizing ourselves and our spiritual practices, our energetic practices, not behind something that we're attempting to do in this place where everything that we do is under scrutiny. You know, it's under the watchful eye of Big Brother, right? Here in the States and in the Western world in general. But this calendar itself is a shining example of the fact that the traditions in West Africa are still very much alive, and it's very clean. It's very updated, per se, right? It's not just this ancient thing. It's not just these people who don't have cell phones. I've taken plenty of trips over the past 3 years to West Africa, to traditional temples where elders have literally preserved practices like ancestral callings and Mtom readings, where they tap into the energies of the earth. If you ever heard of geomancy, they're still very well connected to those practices, but they have cell phones. Their lives continue in the same way that ours do, because colonialism and the encroachment of development is all over the world. But the practices and the way that you live your life can still very much be based on those indigenous principles, so that you yourself can live more like your ancestors did. So again, I want to encourage everybody to take full advantage of what's in this calendar. For one, there's Medu Mait in there, which is the language that our ancestors spoke, which is the hieroglyphs that you'll see in some of the pages. Medu Mait. Medu Mait. Medu itself is the word that means language or speech or writing. And then Mait means that it's for human beings. There's also the concept of Medu Neter, which a lot of the conscious black community is really focused on, because it has a very high level of understanding. But something that we often have skipped is the Medu Mait, which is just the language that's for the human beings. There's also some of what we know as Katibi, which is like the original form of meditation. Inside that book, a spiritual practice that where you can give offering to your ancestors is explained at the end of the calendar, where you give them offerings every 10 days to acknowledge their spirit and have them to understand the exchange that it is between someone in the physical and someone in the non-material. They search for goodness and sweet things and good things just the same way that we do in life. But who's better to call on and ask for help and to give a favor to than the people who have literally given you life, right? On that schedule, again, in time. What says that there's a reason that you should give 7 days a week to a corporation that doesn't do anything but feed your pocket so that you can give that money right back to them? Why shouldn't you split some of that time up at least to give it back to those people who have given you your life, right? So again, I want to encourage you all to take full advantage of the calendar. We have other publications over on the table. We also have some of our herbs that we bring back from West Africa with Ancasta Natural Healing. So yeah, please take a look around. And if you guys have any questions, do you guys have any questions about what's been said so far?
Yeah, I have one about the year 425.
Yes, sir.
Come to that number.
So that's a great question. So when we talk about 425, the reason why it's 425 on that calendar specifically is because when you look at modern society, we are in what year? 2025, right? But 2025 of what? Then the question becomes 2025 years of what? So you start to understand, okay, we're dealing with Gregorian calendar, which came from Julian calendar, which came from Roman calendar, which came from Greek calendar. So to me, when I hear 2025, I'm hearing, oh, it's been 2,025 years of my colonial history. That's all it is. But now, when you look, quote unquote, right, birth of Christ, quote unquote.
Exactly.
But when you look at 425, the reason why it's 425 for us is because, again, going back to what I was saying before, our ancestors dealt with rhythms and cycles. So the Sirius star itself has a certain rhythm where it goes from 1,461 days back to what we would consider one. What I mean by that is this. It's 325 days in a year?
365.
365, sorry. 365, right? But where did the 365 come from? Like I said again, people back then, they used to travel to Iture or Kemet to gain and learn knowledge. So the Greeks and the Romans stole the calendar, but they never explained 365. So 365 for us is what we call a seasonal year, a farmer's year. So that's the calendar that the farmers use to track to learn to plant crops. Now, 365 plus 365 plus 365 plus 365, 4 times. That gives us a cycle of 1,461 days. For us, that's what we call a real year. It's a real year because during that time, the Sirius star, the sun, the moon, and the earth have a specific alignment. If you ever notice, when they show pictures of the pyramids, whether it's in Kemet in Africa or even down there in Central America and Mexico, the pyramids align specifically with certain star systems, the Orion star system. So during that 1,461 days, there's an alignment that happens. So that utilizes, hi, how you doing? That's my boy. So that 1,461 days is an alignment where the Earth, the Sun, and Sirius star meet and they form one line. So that has a specific energetic effect. So that's what we call a real year. So that's every 4 years in our modern day understanding of a year, which is 365. Now, that's 1,461 days, right? So that's why if you look at the calendar, you would see it has 4 sections. Now, 1,461 years is what we would call the Neter's year, which is the year of the gods. So just like the small year is 365, 1,461 is the medium, and then the God's year is the large year. That's 1,461 years, not days. Mm-hmm. That's what we would call the Neter's year. So then, once that happens, that occurrence happens, and there's that alignment, there's a certain specific kind of shift that happens on the planet where things start to kind of like change. Now, once things change and that shift happens and that alignment happens, then the cycle continues, meaning all the star systems, all the stars in every system go back to the original point that they started before they reach 1,461. Mm-hmm. Then it goes back, so then the calendar has to go back to 1. So right now we're in 425 years since the last 1,461 years. So that's how our ancestors kept time. So that was the cycle. That's why if you look at even the Mayans, people like to say, oh, the Mayan calendar ended. But you can only say that if you don't understand indigenous timekeeping. Mm-hmm. It didn't end. The cycle ended, so the year has to go back to 1. Mm-hmm. But modern anthropologists, those coming trying to study and steal and pillage, they don't have that understanding because they don't even know where their calendar comes from. So that's why they can say, oh, the Mayans just ended. It doesn't make sense. They just didn't understand how they were keeping track of time. But again, if you understand the indigenous perspective of rhythms and cycles, then you know what the Mayans is really talking about. So that's why it's 425.
Yeah, we only have time for one more question. I'm sorry. Yes. Mm-hmm. So, No. So the way that our ancestors understand it, and they still do it back home in West Africa, is that every 10 days, it's basically that it's not necessarily an alignment of the stars, but every 10 days, there's almost like a portal that opens, in a sense, so to speak, where it's more favorable to give that offering to your ancestors on that day. That being said, of course, every meal that I have in my house, I put some aside for my ancestors. That's a natural practice that you can do every day. But there's a specific offering that is explained in the calendar that you give to them every 10 days because it's just been known that that's the offering that you give to them on that every 10-day cycle. Got it? Okay. So they're asking us to wrap up, but again, we're at kebtah.org, KEBTAH.org. Again, that's KEBTAH.org, kebtah.org. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, under the same exact name. So we appreciate all of you guys coming out today, and hopefully we'll see you around. We'll be outside, so you guys can check us out. We have a table right out there in the corner. So I appreciate it, and thank you guys for coming out.
The people of Burkina Faso making change for